Somewhere above Western Europe, a private jet slices through storm clouds on final approach to Paris. Rain streaks across the windows. Below, the city glows through the dark like a motherboard lit from within. On board is Pavel Durov, the billionaire founder of Telegram. For years, he turned himself into a paradox, one of the most famous men in tech and one of the hardest men in tech to pin down. No single country to answer to, no ordinary corporate headquarters, no public life that looked remotely normal. He had spent more than a decade building systems designed to resist governments, outlast censors, and keep outsiders locked out. Tonight, that illusion ends. Waiting at Le Bourget Airport are not fans, not reporters, not customs officers. They are French authorities positioned exactly where the plane will stop. The wheels touch down. The cabin door opens. For one last second, Pavel Durov is still the untouchable architect of the internet's most controversial communications empire. Then boots hit the tarmac. Within minutes, the man who built Telegram is in custody, and across encrypted groups used by activists, hackers, scammers, and dissidents around the world, the same four words begin to spread. They got Durov. This is the story of how one of the internet's most elusive founders finally got cornered, and the decade-long war that led him there. To understand why Durov's arrest sent shockwaves through the tech world, you have to go back to the moment he first learned what power really costs. In 2011, Pavel Durov was already a rising legend in Russia. He was the young founder of VKontakte, VK, the country's dominant social network, often described as Russia's Facebook. He was rich, famous, and young enough to believe that building the platform meant controlling the rules. Then, Russia erupted. After disputed parliamentary elections, protests flooded the streets. Organizers used social media to spread meeting points, slogans, and momentum. On VK, opposition groups were growing fast, and Russian authorities take notice. According to Durov, security officials demanded that he shut down certain opposition communities and hand over user data tied to activists. He refused. That refusal changed everything. In public, he still looked like a tech prodigy. In private, the message was becoming clear. If your platform becomes politically dangerous, the state will come for it. Not always loudly, not always immediately, but eventually. Over the next few years, pressure around him intensified. There were disputes over censorship, demands involving political groups, and growing signs that his company was no longer just a business. It had become a battleground. And Durov drew the lesson that would define the rest of his life. If governments could reach you through your company, then one day they would. The surveillance, at least as Durov later described it, did not feel cinematic. It felt suffocating. Too many strange coincidences. Too many reminders that eyes were always nearby. A billionaire in his own city, living with the psychology of a fugitive. Then came one of the strangest images of his career. From a window in St. Petersburg, Durov famously folded paper airplanes out of high-value ruble notes and tossed them into the street below. Cameras caught the chaos. People surged, grabbed, shouted, fought over the falling cash. It looked absurd, arrogant, theatrical, but that was the point. To some, it was a stunt. To others, it was a message, a public act of contempt from a man who wanted the state to know that money could not discipline him and pressure would not tame him. Whether it was rebellion, ego, or both, the symbolism stuck. In a system built on fear and control, Durov was performing defiance in broad daylight. The consequences did not vanish. By 2014, after escalating disputes over data, censorship, and control of VK, Durov was out. He sold his stake, left Russia, and began remaking himself into something far more dangerous than a local billionaire. Not a CEO tied to one country, a founder in exile. And exile would become the blueprint for everything that came next. Because once you decide no government should ever be able to reach you again, you stop building ordinary companies. You start building escape systems. Telegram was born out of that mindset. not just as a messaging app, as a response to pressure, a product shaped by the belief that private communication should survive politics, borders, censorship, and state intimidation. Launched in 2013, Telegram sold itself on speed, scale, and privacy. Its secret chats offered end-to-end encryption. Its broader ecosystem promised resilience, channels, groups, broadcasting tools, and an infrastructure built to keep messages moving, even when governments wanted them stopped. To millions of users, that promise mattered. In Iran, Belarus, and Hong Kong, protesters and dissidents used Telegram to organize when other spaces felt compromised. Journalists used it to protect conversations. Whistleblowers, activists, and ordinary citizens in tense political climates saw it as one of the last major platforms that did not immediately bend when states applied pressure. That made Durov something more than a founder. To supporters, he became a symbol, but symbols are dangerous when they scale, because the same architecture that protects dissent can also protect predation. The same low-friction channels that help activists organize can help criminals coordinate. The same resistance to government overreach can become resistance to almost any form of oversight at all. And that is where the Telegram story became morally complicated. Durov believed he was building a fortress for freedom. His critics believed he had also built shelter for some of the worst people on the internet. Both arguments, in different ways, were true. Over time, Telegram's image split in two. On one side was the idealistic version, an anti-censorship platform defending privacy in an age of constant surveillance. On the other was something much darker. Investigations, watchdog reports, and law enforcement warnings increasingly described parts of Telegram as a haven for criminal networks. Drug trafficking channels, fraud communities, stolen data markets, extremist propaganda, and most disturbingly, repeated warnings from child safety groups about the circulation of child exploitation material on the platform. Telegram has long argued that it removes illegal public content and responds to certain legitimate legal requests within its own framework. Its defenders say no platform at that scale can be perfectly clean, and that blaming the tool for the user is a dangerous path. But critics saw a different reality. To them, Telegram was not just a neutral platform. It was a place where weak moderation, huge scale, and ideological hostility to outside interference created an ecosystem in which abuse could spread faster than enforcement. Governments pushed back. Russia tried to ban Telegram in 2018 after failing to obtain encryption keys tied to an investigation. The ban was messy, technically clumsy, and ultimately ineffective. It was later lifted. Elsewhere, pressure mounted more quietly. European officials, US agencies, and regulators across multiple countries had a growing problem on their hands. What do you do when a communications platform becomes too influential to ignore, too private to monitor easily, and too global to pressure through ordinary means? That question did not just surround Telegram. It surrounded Durov himself. Because the more Telegram became a battleground over speech, crime, and encryption, the more its founder began to look less like a tech executive and more like the human embodiment of a larger conflict. Privacy versus control, freedom versus accountability, and who gets to decide where that line is drawn? Pavel Durov spent years cultivating that image. The black clothes, the sparse public appearances, the almost clinical obsession with discipline and self-control. He spoke about longevity, biohacking, and independence. He held multiple passports, lived largely outside the traditional reach of any one state, and presented himself as a citizen of nowhere in particular. He was rich enough to move constantly, powerful enough to ignore most criticism, and famous enough to turn mystery itself into part of his brand. He looked untouchable, until August 24, 2024. That night, Durov landed at Le Bourget Airport outside Paris on a private jet. Reports also placed a young crypto influencer, Yulia Vavilova, on the trip. And almost immediately the internet began building theories around her social media posts, travel photos, and geotagged breadcrumbs. Some online observers speculated that public digital traces may have helped map his movements. But that part matters. Speculated. There is no confirmed public evidence that any single post led authorities to him, or that anyone on board intended to expose his location. The theory exploded because it was irresistible, the privacy billionaire undone by metadata. The reality, at least publicly, is broader and more serious. French authorities moved against Durov in connection with an investigation tied to Telegram's alleged role in enabling criminal activity and failing to cooperate sufficiently with law enforcement. Within days, prosecutors outlined multiple allegations tied to the platform's use in serious crimes. Durov denied wrongdoing. Supporters called the case political. Critics called it overdue accountability. He was released under judicial supervision, restricted from leaving France, and forced into something he had spent most of his adult life trying to avoid, answering to a state. And that is what made the arrest feel bigger than one founder or even one platform. Because once authorities showed they were willing to go after Durov himself, the message was no longer aimed only at Telegram. It was aimed at every company trying to build strong privacy without surrendering control. Today, Pavel Durov's legal case in France remains unresolved. To his supporters, he is a defender of digital freedom, a man being punished because he refused to build systems governments could quietly lean on. To his critics, he is the founder of a platform that grew too large, too opaque, and too useful to criminals to keep hiding behind ideology. And maybe that is why this story matters. Not because it gives us a clean villain, not because it offers an easy hero, but because it forces a harder question. If a platform protects both dissidents and predators, what exactly is its creator responsible for? And if governments gain the power to break every private system in the name of safety, what happens to everyone else when that power expands? So tell me what you think. Was Pavel Durov a freedom fighter pushed into exile by states that feared privacy? Or did he build the perfect shield for people who never deserved one? Comment below. And subscribe, because the next system flaw is already hiding in plain sight.